He's forgotten more about the managing director of Paragon Trust Company and tax and private client practitioner joins us to bring a common sense approach to money in a world of total insanity. Let's welcome Tony D'Angelo.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. 5 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock, the one and only Tony D'Angelo is joining us as he does each and every Tuesday. Tony, good morning, pal. How are you?
Good morning, Lee Elci, and proud to be among everybody.
All right, so listen, you last week we talked about your 20 questions for the governor. It blew up as we expected on social media. But I got to ask you, tell me about question number 13.
Question number 13, and question number 13 is going to tell us a lot about the character and the true intentions of the people running the state. Now, I'm going to read question number 13 here. And I'll address it as if I were addressing him. Governor Lamont, you had lied to the media that ADVANCECT was the rebranded Connecticut Economic Resource Council, but hard evidence I obtained from the federal government proves ADVANCECT is its own new organization. Other than lying to the media and having it believe you without question, as they usually do, why do you feel the need to set up the second economic development nonprofit and hold your 2020 COVID meetings inside of it? So this week after examination, we now have the reason as to why Ned felt he needed the second nonprofit, and it has everything to do with fraud, concealment, and corrupted motives, all the hallmarks of Ned. Now, please bear in mind in history, and our history here goes back, 2 years, so it's not, prehistoric. No one's been able to get a look under the hood of ADVANCECT. The state had crowed about it a little bit, but, they folded too quickly. There was avenues they could have used, and they didn't, typical from what you see. But I kind of went and, full Internal Revenue Code shakedown here, and I put a statutory request in. Occasionally, I have to do this in practice. People hide money, people hide motives, and whatever the case may be. And, you got to get 6 degrees and ugly. So I'd waited for the 11/15 tax return filing, and then we jumped on them. And basically, they tried to trick me. Typical Connecticut. They tried to hand me the Connecticut Economic Resource Council papers. I said, no, I want that other one. And after pushing them for about 10 days, they finally gave it up. So let's get a look here of how dirty business gets done, how the sausage gets made. Now, by way of history, there's a long-standing supposed business development charity known as the Connecticut Economic Resource Council. It's been around for 25 years. We've talked about it on the show. They collect dues, I'm going to say dues in quotation marks, from utility corporations. And basically, it's kind of like your typical Connecticut public nonprofit slush fund, look the other way sort of thing. The Eversource fines, bad Eversource, what do? You pay the fines. You pay the fines into the Connecticut Economic Resource Council, and then it gets laundered out some other way in kind of a, disguised charitable contributions. Public-private partnerships, we'll get to that in just a little bit. So that's the way it is until 2020. And then we start to see this brand new thing happening. February 3rd, 2020, Lamont lies and tells the Hartford Courant that the Connecticut Economic Resource Council, I'll call it CERC, has been renamed. Underline that word, kids, renamed to Advance Connecticut. And pretty much everybody bought that hook, line, sinker, fisherman, boots, hook, everything else. And given Lamont's history, why isn't anybody asking the question? Now, Lee, you will recall that you and I had the discussion where I had pulled the letter of ADVANCECT and said, hey, there's 2 nonprofits here. Isn't anybody looking at this? And it is basic. It is fundamental. Whenever you see 2 of anything, 2 sets of books, a wife and a girlfriend, it's like, hey, something's not right here. But you think this dawns on our powers that be, forget about it. It's just basic stuff. But, apparently, not that basic, apparently. So when we did that, I couldn't get the records just yet because they were playing as they were. And so finally I get the papers in. Let's watch the timeline. Again, every thief's got a timeline. February 12th, 2020, the charitable application is filed with the IRS in Kentucky. Now, they put a kind of a, whatever you want to call it, like a sob letter saying that if we don't get this thing in right away, we're going to lose a $450,000 contribution from Garrett Moran. Garrett Moran, you can look him up, he's a Ned Buddy, or the Garrett Moran Foundation. And when they set this thing up, it's the same darn type of entity. They say, well, this one's going to have a, disadvantaged communities. This is what we're going to do. The most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life, and maybe it's just me and, what I happen to do in some days of the cesspool of what I might call what the practice world is. February 25th, they get an all clear. Here's your letter. 2 weeks? It takes me 6 months, and I do this thing all the time, and you talk with the examiner, and you got a sense that 2 weeks, here it is, bang, so somebody's got a buddy happening. Now, to be clear, nothing happens to CERC. That's still there, all the money, and that's still functioning. They don't want you to think it's there. Now, on March 12th, 2020, Lamont starts with his COVID orders. April 13th, he sets up his advisory committee of ADVANCECT, his supposed brain trust. These are the people that will lead us out of the mess. One thing to keep in mind in ADVANCECT is that they have no employees, so you got no witnesses. So let's review this all-star panel that he had. Dr. Scott Gottlieb, we remember him, Drain the Swamp, the Pfizer board, Dr. Death, Ezekiel Emanuel, Annie Lamont's Oak HCFT partner, Indra Nooyi, remember her, the evangelist for Connecticut. We found out on this show she's a Florida resident. Marvin was calling her Miss Florida, had me on the floor. Dr. Albert Koa, Yale, he's probably probably one of Ned's greatest crybabies. And his usual gallery of Mounds, Gabal, and Gifford, and others. Now, this committee set up to run in ADVANCECT, and basically they're in secret, no freedom of information, and whatever the case may be. They're going to talk about disadvantaged communities. So, you've got this whole cast of characters, and they're not talking about disadvantaged communities. We've got one big, shall I say, ingredient to this cake that we need, and it's McKinsey and Company. To those of you who want the spelling of McKinsey, McKinsey. For those unfamiliar, McKinsey is the #1 global consulting firm in the world, and it's been highly controversial and scandal-ridden for about the past 20 years. It started out in 1926 as a white shoe efficiency company, but it's kind of morphed since then. They've been involved, you can look up the litany, Enron 2001, the Galleon Group 2009, Valiant 2015, and really the most recent and the most, I'm going to use the word dastardly, is China in 2018 with the Uyghurs and the oppression of the Uyghurs and the Uyghur genocide and things like that. They really have been the high-paid corporate executioner for the stars. These people were hired guns, and they've really, they cross over very dubious ethical lines, and it doesn't matter to them. In December 2018, there's a large article, you can look it up in the New York Times, this is before the New York Times went totally woke and commie. McKinsey was consulting to a large drone factory in China, and they held a retreat in China, and they were working with the Chinese government to the Uyghurs and the incarceration of the Uyghurs. It's well documented. You can read about it. And it gives you all the hallmarks of McKinsey. Command, control, surveillance. That's what they're about. And that's basically what they are hired to do. There's a very good interview. You can look this up on the Fox site. Tucker Carlson had interviewed one of the managing directors of McKinsey in 2020, and there's a whole other litany of things. Time won't allow us that, and his name was Peter Walker. And Tucker Carlson pretty much said, you're an executioner. You don't care about anything, and you just get the job done regardless of the human cost. And Peter Walker looked at him and said, I'm a pragmatist. I do what I have to do. This is what they do. This is, quote unquote, where we get our COVID policies. And think about it, Lee Elci. Just think about it for a moment. People like Lamont, or Cuomo or Phil Murphy or, Janet Mills and May, they ain't all that imaginative. Right. They ain't all that bright. Right. They need a script. Where do they get the script? They get it from McKinsey. And I'll just say this, and I know you've got a ton of questions. Advanced CT took in $1 million in 2020. Of that $1 million, 900,000 of that went to McKinsey. They left a little till in the checking account or whatever the case may be. Now, other than the Garrett Moran contributions, I think a couple of $50,000 contributions, $450,000 comes in from our wonderful, should be abolished, Department of Economic and Community Development. So think of it. You've got the state laundering money through an agency, laundering money again through a nonprofit. So the citizens of Connecticut have the privilege of being under the command and control of McKinsey. And I can go on. This is probably another segment. McKinsey has pages and books and treatises, interviews with Zeke Emanuel. Their mindset, their way of doing things is along with everything else they've ever done. Perpetual COVID forever. Don't kid yourself. If we had said in the beginning, Ned Lamont came out and said, I'm hiring McKinsey to run COVID. I mean, some of us in the state that don't read anything other than the local dailies would have frantically revolted. But this is the mindset. Let me just say this before we run out of time. Josh Cabal, who is a Thermo Fisher alumnus. Thermo Fisher in 2018 and 2019, and again, this is not conspiracy stuff. You could read about it. Was involved in the tracking of every single, the DNA of every single citizen in China. Now, Thermo Fisher and McKinsey are kind of like, milk and coffee. They kind of go back, and they kind of run along the same way. His assistant in the Department of Health, you don't hear about him a lot, if at all, if I'm pronouncing it right. His name is Benjamin Beckelstein, and apologies to the gentleman, I know I don't have his name right, but he is a managing director, or was a managing director at McKinsey before he came to the state. And he was the vaccine coordinator in Connecticut until this past month. I don't know what happened this past month, but what it all comes down to is just, don't tell me these people care about us. They have a motive. As the New York Times person said in his article, I've got a lot of papers and I apologize here, but basically he said is they do what you want for them to do, and they ask no questions.
Well, that was going to be my question to you as I'm listening to you, break all this down. Is my question goes right back to the beginning. What do they do? What is the front, Tony? You're telling us that there's two of these nonprofits set up.
Right. They run McKinsey out of the secret one, and they want you all to think it's one, but really it's two. And because they use the McKinsey management through the nonprofit. So McKinsey effectively is governing the state. I mean, our state government might as well just go home.
What are they? But what are they feigning to do? Right? What are they pretending to? I guess that I'm sort of still stuck on that. Go ahead.
Perpetual COVID, Lee Elci. Perpetual COVID all the time. The hallmarks of McKinsey: control and surveillance. Tracking of citizens, handing them money, exalting of the elite. This is what McKinsey does. Amazing. That's their history. And it's like if Ned Lamont, if believe me, it won't happen, but if somebody in Connecticut Press says, Governor Lamont, why'd you hire McKinsey? Oh, I just, give us a little bit of economic support or give us a little bit of guidance. I mean, that's the equivalent of saying Tampa Bay got Tom Brady to play tennis. You don't do that. I mean, you get them for a reason and they execute. So where we look at things and say, this is incredible, this is galling, it doesn't matter to them. It's like where I go crazy about the identities being stolen. Yeah. They're not only after identities, they're after DNA, they're after stuff, the medical records and whatever the case may be, because this is how, where McKinsey has been involved in government management, this is how they have operated. Tony, it's a fact. Read about it.
Tony D'Angelo, our guest every Tuesday, and hot and heavy, going heavy after Governor Lamont, and rightfully so. And by the way, you can always follow him on Twitter, which is Tony D'Angelo 7. And Tony again posted 20 questions he has for Governor Lamont that are unanswered. And what was the sort of the theme, the responses from that? Because that blew up big time. It went almost viral on the social media.
Well, certainly no answers, but there were a lot of things. I got a lot of, a lot of input, a lot of encouragement.
Did you get anybody defending the governor?
Not a word, Lee Elci. Not a word. And I think that's a part of this, where you can point at them and you can prove the fraud, the sham, the two nonprofits running McKinsey. And let me just say this, McKinsey's not out of this game. There's $1 million that the state paid to ADVANCECT in December. Again, I don't think that's being given to help disadvantaged communities. We're still going to be on this thing, but that's what they do, and it's just I'm just appalled. I hear a lot about Bob Stefanowski, God bless him, God bless his effort. We want to audit all the state agencies. Somebody has to do something about these sewery public-private nonprofits, quasi-publics, and all this stuff. There is so much garbage going on here. And I mean, honestly, truthfully, I say this, Republican, Democratic, Martian, German, if you don't, I will, and I'm going to make you look foolish, because this is really where the dirty sausage making is going on in the state.
Tony D, another amazing 20 minutes of radio. I thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate it as always. I know the listeners really appreciate it.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity. More next week.
Your efforts are tireless and endless. We appreciate it very much. So does everybody else. Thank you, buddy. All right, listen, we'll take our break, come back, bottom of the hour around the corner. We'll spend some time with Bruce Flax, Liz Carano. It's on the horizon as well. Stick around.